Okay, this afternoon we've been revising the causes of the American Civil War. To say that the American Civil War was caused by divisions between the northern United States and the southern United States is a real simplification. And we've been looking at ways of creating a mind map of the different reasons that we've been studying recently. As you can see here, students have been drawing around their hand and looking at 5 main causes of the American Civil War. And I'll just talk you through some of these. And as I talk you through, if you want to develop your own map, please go ahead with that. One of the first reasons why the American Civil War begins is the increasing demands made by the abolition movement. The abolition of slavery is gaining support, particularly in the northern United States at this time. And there are several things going on within the abolition movement, but just to point out 3 key events. In 1831, we see the founding of a newspaper called The Liberator, and this was used to spread abolitionist views. We also see in 1851 the publication of a novel called Uncle Tom's Cabin, and it's written by Harriet Beecher Stowe. And in that novel, it really opens up and explores the horrors of life in slavery. And you can see its popularity. It sold 2 million copies in 10 years, and it's still on sale today. But it really enabled the abolition movement to help people understand directly what daily life of being a slave was like. One of the third things the abolitionist movement was doing was we see in 1833 the founding of the National Anti-Slavery Society. And by 1838, we can see that its membership has actually grown to 250,000. So it's gaining support, and it produces essays and pamphlets. It petitions Congress to end slavery. A second main cause of the American Civil War was really the southern United States feeling as though their power was beginning to be threatened. We see slaveholders and Congress members from the South feeling as though their way of life and their influence is beginning to falter. But be under no mistake, at this time, the American economy is being powered by the southern United States and the plantation system. In fact, slavery is the glue that holds the economy together, and the northern United States have benefited enormously from that. So you might be wondering, well, why do the southern United States feel as though their power is being threatened? Well, it's largely to do with the increase in population. At this time, the population of the northern United States is beginning to grow. It's becoming more industrial. It's seeing migration of people from Europe and settling in the northern United States. Well, of course, the power in Congress is determined by the population size of the state. And so the southern United States, whose population isn't growing at that rate, are really worried that the northern states are going to have more influence in Congress and more power. A third reason is, you can see here, the student has written north, south, east and west. One of the other reasons why the American Civil War begins is as a result of tensions caused by the expansion into the western United States at this time. And in 1846, we see that Congress says that slavery should be banned in new territories which have recently been gained from Mexico. And the southern United States are very concerned that slavery is not going to be extended, and it is a threat to their way of life, that as the United States of America grows, slavery is not going to grow with it and expand west with it. The fourth reason for the American Civil War starting is this man here. You can see he's been beautifully drawn, Abraham Lincoln. Honest Abe. Abraham Lincoln is a Republican, and he's campaigning against the existing president, James Buchanan, in the 1860 election. And Abraham Lincoln is campaigning strongly against slavery. He said that he would stop the spread of slavery, and he also promises to create a railroad, a transcontinental railroad. This, of course, is the opposite of what the southern United States want to see happen. One of the fifth reason is that as a result of the 1860 election, Abraham Lincoln becomes United States president. And at this point, with a threat to their way of life, South Carolina cannot accept the terms of Abraham Lincoln's presidency. And they unanimously agree that they will secede. Secede is a word that just means break away from. S-E-C-E-D-E, and they break away from the Union, the United States of America. And they're very soon joined by 6 other states. At this point, it looks as though war is imminent. And Lincoln makes a speech in 1861 saying that it's actually illegal for the South to leave the United States. And as part of this speech, he insists that all the government buildings and army forts in the South are still the property of the US government, and that the Confederacy, the southern United States, have no right to use them. Well, shortly after this speech is made, we see the Confederate Army bombarding or bombing Fort Sumter in 1861, and war is declared. Now, during this period of increasing tension and outbreak of war, there is one man particularly who is trying to resolve some of the issues in Congress. So whilst Henry Clay and Clay's Compromise is not a cause of the American Civil War, it really is a consideration at this time. And you need to know 4 main elements of Clay's Compromise. Henry Clay was more than aware of the tensions that were occurring in Congress during this period. In fact, in one incident, we have congressmen physically fighting each other in the government building. And Henry Clay, although he's a pro-slavery Southern politician, suggests a compromise, a possible way forward. And he gets agreement on 4 things. 1, that California should become slave-free as it enters the United States of America. 2, that the sale of slaves should be banned in the US capital, Washington, D.C. 3, that territories like New Mexico and Utah that have been gained from Mexico, instead of automatically saying they should be slave-free, they should actually decide for themselves if they wanted slavery or not. And finally, all states and the national government should accept a Fugitive Slave Act. This means that if a slave has escaped and gone to the north, or the south for that matter, it is everyone's legal duty to return escaped slaves back to their holders. Well, Clay's Compromise in 1850 won a real victory for slaveholders' power, because in part it defends slaveholders' rights, and it also sets about triggering a huge amount of propaganda where the abolitionists and the southern politicians go into the new territories from Mexico and try and make sure that their views are made aware and that people vote for them as the state decides whether to be a slave state or slave-free. So that's a brief overview, a summary of the causes of the American Civil War.